Hey guys, Mike here. In this video, I'm going to explain why you suck at Fire Emblem. I'm going to show visually with an example as to why people have trouble with the game. So you can see I have this nifty chart here, and it's just supposed to illustrate an example of how turns play out in Fire Emblem, right? So first, let me explain what each of these colors mean and these lines mean, right? So the first you have is player phase. I think that's pretty obvious. You read this chart going from top to bottom, right? And each line on here represents one move or one interaction between you and the enemy. Now, if you have an overpowered unit, then yeah, you can, you have this blue line, which if you recall to the game, like it actually shows these blue lines in the game where it's it's the amount of damage that you're doing to the enemy, right? So a blue line in my example is representing you able to do damage to the enemy, but you're not taking a counterattack for some reason. Like either your unit is just so strong that you just kill the unit on the first hit that the enemy is unable to counterattack, or maybe you attack from 2 range, or you basically are just dominating the enemy, right, and not taking damage. Whereas a purple line here is actually when you attack the enemy, but you also take damage back from the enemy because the enemy gets in a counterattack on you, right? So, it should be obvious. A purple line is obviously less ideal than a blue line, right? Because if you take damage, that means you're going to have to heal up that damage, and that's going to cost you more turns, right? So here I just illustrated someone who only plays on player phase, right? Someone who, they'll get their attacks in, they'll make sure that they'll try to kill units, but they won't risk putting their units in range of the enemy for the next enemy phase. So say they're able to kill a squad of units, but they just kind of hang back and they just stay outside of the next enemy squad's danger zone, right? So they won't fight on enemy phase, right? They'll get in their attacks, maybe they'll take some damage with the purple, but they do their moves. It's about 10 lines, right? It's about 10 moves, about 10 units. Typically, most of the game, it's about 10 to 12 units, especially in Fire Emblem Engage. That goes up to 14 in the end game. But you can see their enemy phase, there's nothing happening on enemy phase, right? Just like the enemy is advancing on them, but they don't fight on enemy phase. So there's no interaction. The enemy phase is basically nothing, right? And then the next player phase comes, and then something similar to above here will repeat, and they're getting their attacks. They can take some damage as well, but the player phase, for the most part, the next player phase, it's about the same as the first player phase, and that just repeats over and over. All right, now this is what someone, a more skilled Fire Emblem player, will play. They will play on both phases. Okay, so they get in their attacks, but they're looking to see, with whatever units they have left, or even whatever units have already attacked, they're also planning for the next enemy phase to see if they can get more of their ally units in range of the enemy units, right? Because, say I have a tanky unit like a general, and I can stick them in range of multiple enemy units, and that general doesn't take any damage, so they're able to just counterattack with their silver great axe and just do a lot of damage on enemy phase. So they're able to actually deal, like if that general gets attacked 5 times on enemy phase, then it doesn't have to be a general, it could be any unit. It could be like a great knight. Some units are better for enemy phase, like they can take more damage, like maybe a great knight or a general. You can even put weaker units as well if you do the calculations, and maybe they can't take like 5 attacks, but maybe they can take 1 or 2 attacks and get in damage on enemy phase. And that's where like formations matter, where if you put it in a straight front line, then you'll guarantee that each ally only takes 1 attack, so you can fit more ally units in the danger zone and actually guarantee that they survive, so you can spread out that damage among many different units, right? So that's where like tactics is more relevant. And then so you'll do like, this is just an example, this is 3 instances of damage that you're doing to the enemy on enemy phase. And if you set up your enemy phases right, you can get really spicy enemy phases. Like you can do up to 10, maybe even 12 instances of damage. And that's typically more for advanced tactics, but this is just a very average, your everyday run of the day skilled player's enemy phase. You know, they're just trying to do as much damage as possible, get in as much attacks as possible on enemy phase. All right, and then the player phase below it'll just cycle back. They'll continue, and they'll probably have a similar player phase and a similar enemy phase. Right, so you can see that the skilled player is trying to do as much damage as possible on enemy phase, and you would say, well, isn't that risky? Like, won't you die? And the beauty about Fire Emblem is that it's not risky at all. It's completely safe, because Fire Emblem is a heavy stats and numbers and calculations game. So if you run all the calculations ahead of time, before you just blindly stick a ally unit in range of the enemy in their danger zone, then you will survive. Like, you can calculate all of like you assume the worst situation possible. Like, okay, if I don't dodge this, and I'm probably not going to dodge it, you have to think like you're not going to dodge the attack. And you say, okay, I'm going to take this amount of damage, but I'm going to deal this amount of damage. And you just trade like that. Then you also can calculate for criticals as well, because you know, it displays the critical rate for each weapon that the enemy may attack you with. Right? So if it's the enemy has like a 10% chance to crit you, but you put in a ally in range who has 10 dodge, there's no chance he's going to crit you. It's literally a 0% chance he's going to crit you. So then that's good, because you can just account for just the non-crit damage that you're going to take, right? So I'm going to take this damage, and then I'm going to deal out this damage. It's just all predetermined, right? And you can, if you want to play risky and gambly, like if there's like a 2% chance he'll crit you, you can still put a enemy in range. There's tanky units can actually survive crits, believe it or not. And there's Divine Pulse. If there's nothing wrong with using Divine Pulse, and that way I think obviously a better player who plays more safer and is doing more of like an Iron Man run, or where they can't afford to risk 2% crits, obviously they're not going to put a ally in range that has a 2% chance of getting critted. So that's it's just whatever, different rules, but the principle remains the same, right? You're getting more damage on enemy phase, and it's all based on calculations and preparation. The next point I wanted to bring up are criticals. Now, criticals are good for player phase. They can save you an extra move on player phase, but where criticals really shine is for enemy phase. Criticals shine on the average, right? So in a single instance, like for just one, say you were given one attack and you had to bet your chances on critting. From a strategic point of view, it's not good to bet on the critical. But over the average or the long term, like over thousands of fights, that's when the critical percentage will converge to the average, right? So like for a whole playthrough, say I have thousands of engagements, and most of those engagements, if I had like a 60% critical average, then that means 600 of those 1,000 engagements I would land a critical. And usually when you land a critical, you kill the enemy, right? Now, the reason I'm not saying that's good for player phase is because each unit only has one attack on player phase, right? And if you only have 10 turns per map, around there approximately, then you're not getting that much value out of critical. So that's where criticals come in for enemy phase. That is what criticals are for enemy phase. If you stick a unit who has a high chance to crit in range of the enemy, you can roll so many more times on a crit. You can do so much more damage. So instead of these purple lines just representing like chip damage, these purple lines actually represent kills. And that's the power of the critical. It's on enemy phase. So people who build for critical but just play on player phase, that's not how you do it. You play criticals are for enemy phase because you get so many more rolls. You're trying to roll as much as possible on enemy phase because you get so many more opportunities for that unit to fight, right? A single unit can only fight once on player phase. And yeah, sure, they'll get criticals, but if that unit can fight 5 times, even up to 10 times on enemy phase, that's 10 chances to roll out a critical. And you could potentially, like, if the average is 60%, you could get around 6 kills on enemy phase. That is the power of the critical. That's how you use criticals effectively at a higher skill level. All right, the last point I wanted to bring up is the Bonded Shield. So Bonded Shield is very nice because it allows you to do more riskier enemy phases, right? So we have, because you're Bonded Shield, you're not really taking damage from the enemy because your units that are getting attacked are being protected by the Bonded Shield unit, the Chi Adept. right? So that's where these purple lines turn into just blue lines. It's just straight up damage you're doing. It's like a whole nother free player phase, and that's the power of the chi add up. They're giving you this free, safe damage. You know, I just threw in a purple line here just because, you know, maybe someone's not protected with bonded shield, but you still ran the calculations and just wanted to optimize your enemy phase so that they could actually do damage and get an attack on the enemy, right? And they would survive. To summarize, to make Fire Emblem easier and to play better, you have to utilize enemy phase. I think in the early maps, like the early and mid game maps, maybe you don't really have to play that intense on enemy phase, but I feel like for the end game maps on maddening, there's a lot of reinforcements, there's a lot of pre-deploys, and the combination of reinforcements and pre-deploys is pretty challenging. But you can make yourself, you can make it so much easier on yourself if you actually start to play on enemy phase and do damage, significant damage on enemy phase, because what that's doing is it's giving you more leeway and more comfort on player phase, right? Because if you already killed like 3 to 4 units on enemy phase, then you can relax, you can plan a little bit, you can move a little bit more optimally on the next player phase, right? You're not sweating, like trying to like figure out how all your units can try to kill, you know, clear the squad that's right in your face on that player phase. Like, you know, there's so many times where if you don't play on enemy phase, you'll find like you're just one move short of killing all of the enemies that are right in your face, right? And all that takes is that one enemy to just kill your healer or something, right? He has free reign because you weren't able to kill everyone on your player phase. But that's where that power of enemy phase comes in, because it just gives you so much more comfort and flexibility because you're able to do that job on enemy phase and get rid of those units. Another way to think about it is, you know, delayed gratification, right? Sure, you could just wait till player phase and be lazy, or you could play on enemy phase, like do the hard work earlier, and then your gratification is delayed because the next player phase you're able to relax and, you know, plan out better and just chill on the next player phase, right? Again, I think this is a highly relevant topic for the end game chapters where the game is really pushing you to your limits to see if you can fight effectively, and just mastering all of these techniques of, you know, building great units from an RPG perspective that can actually just one-shot and straight up kill enemies. Yes, that's one part of it. The RPG elements of building a unit, yes, that's very important. But also playing more tactically on enemy phase to set up as much kills and damage as possible on enemy phase, combined with bonded shield and the chi adapts, just protecting you, saving you moves where you don't have to heal as much, and then also combining criticals into the mix where you're just outputting so much more damage and getting more rolls on those criticals. And that's what enemy phase allows you to do, is to roll more on criticals. Just all of these techniques will make you a better player. You'll have an easier time playing Fire Emblem, especially at the higher difficulties like maddening. So anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and thanks for watching.